to Dr. Rensen and let her introduce herself because she does it in such a beautiful way, and we are all in for a treat tonight.
Thank you, thank you. I'm so thrilled to be here with you all. My name is Denisa, and my passion is designing women's lives for bliss. I have been a physician for many, many years in anti-aging regenerative medicine. I work here in Cabo at the STEM Aid Institute in person, working with pluripotent stem cells and exosomes. Truly the most cutting edge whole body rejuvenation we have in the world at this time. But my passion truly is to bring us closer and closer and closer to our bliss, to our erotic spectrum, to living our health turned on, to living at the zenith of our physical, metaphysical potentiality. And all of us deserve to have daily access to bliss, to ecstasis, to our erotic intelligence. And I love to talk about this the most in the world. Surely we can talk functional medicine, hormones, etc. But when you get me talking about bliss, we could go on for hours. So let's do that together tonight. Since it's February, it's the month of love. Let's explore that together. Love, bliss, and chocolate. This is a salon, and as all of you guys know, salon is a gathering of the minds. Salons started in 16th century in Italy, and they were run by salonières, inspiring hosts that would bring together interesting conversations and hold the discussions that would always expand and inspire and educate as well. So tonight, I'd love to just give you a poetic view on bliss, ecstasis, and your health and your Eros. It's a journey, and let's just dive into that journey together. Now, this is a mindful luxury salon, and I talk a lot about luxury. And essentially, to me, luxury is any kind of a service or product that creates intimacy and beauty and transcendence in your life. It can be very simple. It doesn't have to be Louis Vuitton or a Bottega bag. It can really be a few minutes in powerful, transcendent conversation with someone you met on the beach. Those are luxurious minutes. And that's what brings expansion, illumination, a revelation. That is the true luxury. And bliss, ecstasis, eros are at the cutting edge of this experience. So let's dive into this mindful luxury and on this beautiful topic. Bliss is the compass, love is the land. This is a poem that I wrote early on when I began downloading a lot of content about bliss. When I was living in Hawaii, I had a practice in Hawaii, and I began to realize that prescribing hormones and giving IVs was not going to make it for the women. We really needed to be in touch with our bliss, and that's the best medicine of all. So a lot of poetry came rushing through in those times, and this was one of the first ones. Bliss is the compass, love is the land. Very minimalist, very to the point, but it really reminds us that the landscape of our lives is love, and bliss is that compass that tells us whether we are on the right path in our lives on this beautiful landscape. Now, I will also send you a PDF of these notes, so please don't worry. Just take the journey with me, and you'll receive these notes as well. So who else to start this talk on love other than Rumi, the poet Rumi? Lovers find secret places inside this violent world where they make transactions with beauty. Lovers find secret places inside this violent world where they make transactions with beauty. And that's what we do as lovers in the world. We make transactions with beauty. We make transactions with bliss. We make transactions with ecstasis. We make transactions with peace. And that's how you know that you are a lover of life. Also, love is a place where we feel safe and really adored and loved. And no one says it more beautifully than Hafiz, the poet Hafiz. He says, and love says, I will take care of you to anything that's near. And love says, I will take care of you to anything that's near. And that really exemplifies what it feels like to be a lover of life, to be in love with life itself, is to know that you are taken care of, that you can trust even the challenges, even the brutality sometimes that comes our way. Just trust, because as long as you're close to love, it will take care of you. You'll see. So that's Hafiz. But as I'm nearing the topic of our discussion on love, I really want us to explore what actually, where love breaks down for us in our lives. And, you know, it's always important to uncover the shadows, the intricacies of why we block love out of our lives. And most of the reasons why that happens is out of our wounding, out of our fear, out of our shame and guilt that we have accumulated, not even necessarily in our own lifetimes. It could be 16 generations of epigenetic coding in your DNA, from your ancestors. And so sometimes it's not really yours even, but the wounds are there. So Rumi says this beautifully in this poem: your task is not to seek love, but merely to seek and find all the barriers within yourself that you have built against it. So in our discussions today, when we reach the breakout salon rooms on love, we will really be exploring the barriers that we still have up against love. And we have many. And I know we are evolved, intelligent, conscious, future conscious women here, but really at the end of the day, we get exhausted, we carry our wounds, and we have physical pain or emotional pain. And there you go, barriers go up. So we will be exploring what those barriers are. You know, some of the barriers that we carry against love are shame and guilt, fear and anger, unworthiness, despair, worry, apathy, irritation, impatience, egoism, arrogance, self-importance. All of this will block that pure flow to access to that unconditional love that's inherent in us. And so I want us to really explore which ones of those still you carry, and be really, really honest with yourself and neutralize them. As soon as you shine a light on them, they get neutralized and they disappear. They cannot have a hold on you. So the barriers, and what are the portals to love? You know, what actually opens you to unconditional love? Is it silence? Is it pleasure? Is it the gentleness of a touch? Is it the emptiness of a room? Is it the freedom that you have, the beauty that you're able to access, appreciation and gratitude? You know, what are the portals to love? Okay, so we will be discussing those in our breakout salons. So we've covered the topic of love, we touched on it, and we will go into more depth in the breakout salons, so where we can kind of really explore this. But let's get into bliss. And when I talk about bliss, I talk about it as a flavor of the flow state. Now, the flow state is a state that you reach when you drop into selflessness, timelessness, effortlessness, richness. It's being in the zone. It's kind of like the surfer is cutting through that wave. He's in the flow state. He's not thinking about who he is, where he is, what time it is. That's the flow state. In orgasm, when you lose sense of time, that is a flow state as well. So bliss is a flavor of the flow state, and I talk about it in my work as the yin of flow, and ecstasis being the yang of flow. So bliss is ananda, blessedness, beatitude, a beautiful attitude that just awakens from your cells when you're in it. It's a non-ordinary state of consciousness. It's the flow state infused with a sense of blessedness, beatitude, yeah? And it's the yin of flow. It's that existential exhalation, inhalation. When you inhale, you receive life, and that's bliss. So you could be feeling it when you really had hour-long massage, and your your mind no longer works, and you just feel sinking into that massage bed, and you feel this receiving energy, and it's, you lose a sense of time and place and sense of self, and that's bliss. And of course, physiologically, this will show up as, flooding of serotonin and anandamide in your body. And I talk a lot about the neurophysiology of bliss in my work, and we can answer those questions in our Instagram live, which we will have on Saturday. Now, ecstasis is the yang of flow. So we have bliss, yin, inhalation, receiving. Ecstasis is yang. It's that surfer cutting through the waves, the downhill skier in the flow state, but this is an active doing type of flow. And it's an awe, it's a euphoria, it's a rapture. And it's masculine in flavor, it's yang. And it's kind of like an exhalation. And that is a flow state, but that's not bliss. That is ecstasis. So you can kind of start to sense, where in your life do you get in touch with bliss, that receiving blissful energy, and the rapturous yang energy of ecstasis. And they are the yin and the yang of the flow state. And this will show up more as norepinephrine, as dopamine. This will be much more active in nature. So that is bliss and ecstasis. And then we drop into Eros. Now, Eros is very dear to me to talk about, because when I began formulating the work around bliss and ecstasis and the flow state and how to reach these states more, more efficiently in our lives, how to recognize them, how to amplify them, how to live a lot more from the state of bliss on a moment-to-moment basis, then I began to realize, well, when you reach bliss, it's so pleasurable. How do you show up in the world again? Yeah. It's kind of like, what's the impetus to show up, come back into life again? And from that moment, I began formulating the whole concept of the Eros, of the ignited force of creation. You must create, because such a love opens inside of you that you cannot not move to create in the world. So that is the concept of Eros. And Rumi talks about this very beautifully in this quatrain. Those tender words we said to one another have been stored in the secret heart of heaven. One day, like the rain, they will fall and spread, and the whole world grow green with our love. And with that kind of love, you show up for your beloved, and the beloved is life itself. It's the whole catastrophe, and you're in love despite it all. And that's where mystic, ecstatic poets come in to keep reinfusing that in our lives. Those tender words we said to one another have been stored in the secret heart of heaven. One day, like the rain, they will fall and spread, and the whole world will grow green with our love. Rumi, speaking to his beloved. So Eros is passion. It's pleasure, it's creation, it's that ignitive force. It's your intelligence in love. And sometimes this is a little bit intimidating to explore, because you realize how much more you can explore this than you actually do on a daily basis. And that's why I have created something called the erotic spectrum of the human, so we can recognize where we're at different times in our lives. But Eros essentially is that innovative spark in you. It's that solar fuel to love and to creation. It's an existential ignition. It comes from your underbelly and you cannot stop it when it turns on. Yeah. And that's Eros. And of course, drop back to when you first fell in love and just that welling up in your belly, that churning energy that made you speak and move mountains to see your beloved. That is Eros, and it wakes up when we're young. And it's in fact in us all the time, even as children, but very, very subtly and very beautifully and innocently. And it's not a sexual energy, it's a creative force that you must go and play. You cannot not go and play. That's Eros. And it's about creating life. And of course, it's that creative force, and you can recognize it in you. And it looks like dopamine, anandamide, serotonin, oxytocin mixed together. It's all of the brain waves that we can access all in one. This is where it all comes together, the bliss and ecstasis and love in Eros. So before we get into our breakout rooms, I want to introduce you to something called the erotic spectrum of the human. And the erotic spectrum I formulated when I realized that Eros has a dark side. And Eros has a wounded side. And Freud talks about this. That's Thanatos. Thanatos is the death instinct of the human. Eros is the life instinct of the human. And you can travel between Thanatos and Eros in your life and play out different shades of this spectrum at different times of your life. So, for instance, Thanatos, the death instinct, the annihilating instinct, the sabotage that happens when you're so wounded, when you're so broken, and you found power, and from there can churn up darkness and evil and of course, I never talk about humanity as being evil. I talk about it as being wounded, because the wounds will create all that atrocity. Yeah. So Thanatos is this instinct to end the pain somehow, and you can play that out in sexuality as well, even having vanilla sex with your partner. But if he holds you down as a master and slave model, that's Thanatos in action. You're playing that out, because that is just, sometimes we just need to play it out somewhere so that we don't take it out onto the world. Yeah. So that's Thanatos, that's thanatic sexuality. We see that in BDSM communities, we see that in pornography, we see that in regular, marriages as well. This is just, once you start recognizing it, oh, I've been there. Oh, I've done that. Been there. Thanatos has been a part of my life. Well, of course it is, because that is the woundedness of your sexual energy, and it plays itself out. You need to work it out, and you got to go through. So that's why the BDSM communities thrive, pornography thrives. People need to work that out somehow. Yet that also causes a lot of devastation in the world. Now, if you move from Thanatos energy to the middle of the spectrum, where Thanatos and Eros mix together, you can have really conscious sexuality happening, where you are able to play out the darkness, yet know that you are light. Yeah. So you can play with Thanatos and Eros in your lovemaking, or in the way you write or create. And you're able to mix these, but you're conscious of it. You know what's going on. You're not blind to it. And then you move into Eros, the life instinct, the pure, unconditional, unadulterated, intimate, innocent, tantric love, where you make love out of pure connection with spirit, with God, with universe, with cosmic intelligence, and so on. So when we're looking at sexuality in our society or in our lives, I think it's really important to understand this spectrum, Thanatos to Eros, from numbness to ecstasy, because sometimes when you're in Thanatos, you become numb. You become erotically numb and flat. And so, and your passions are dampened because there is a lot of wounding being worked out in that state. So we move along all the time, healing, 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 so that our sexuality can be erotic, not fanatic. And in the middle, we test out all those areas. So this is what I want you to explore as you go into the month of love and the month of romantic love and sexuality. Start to observe where in your life does Eros play out? Where is it really pure and at the edge of its spectrum, really pure tantric, supreme, sublime love with God and the divine? And where is there a lot of darkness, a lot of wounding that's being played out in sexuality, sensuality, and the way in your fantasy? Watch your fantasies, because you'll be surprised how that mixes together sometimes. So that's the erotic spectrum of the human. And of course, we're here in the evening and we have our chocolate, and chocolate is a really, really appropriate piece for this talk, because it really contains all the chemicals that really show up in bliss and ecstasis and in Eros. Serotonin, that's the feel-good chemical. Anandamide, the bliss chemical. Theobromine, the vasodilator that you need to get aroused. Magnesium to relax. Phenylethylamine, PEA, that's also extremely, that's the love hormone. That's what shows up when you get excited about meeting someone for the first time. That's the chemical that shows up. And all of these inspire the biochemistry of bliss, ecstasis, and Eros. So I hope this is a journey that we can explore together next in our breakout rooms. And I will post the questions that I have formulated for us this evening to dive in and talk together. Dive into these breakout rooms. We're going to talk about love. We're going to talk about bliss and ecstasis and Eros. We touched on all of these, and why don't we just go dive into our first breakout salon? Everyone has the questions, and the first salon breakout will be about love. We're going to look at the fact that pure unconditional love, truly the one that Jesus Christ talked about, and I'm not religious. Every single religious leader that is pure and enlightened would say the same thing. Unconditional love is our birthright. But we have created a lot of barriers against it. What are those barriers for you? And what are the portals that are open that you can keep cracking open to keep that, to expand your love? You know, I say, when I fall, love grows. And I've fallen a lot in my life. And every time I fell to the ground, face down, my life got big. My love got much bigger. And that's what matters. That's what matters. So let's look at the barriers. Let's look at what's blocking you. Is it shame, guilt, hate, victimhood? What's going on for you? And what are the portals? What have you got open so that that unconditional love can illuminate through? Let's dive into the love breakout salon. Okay, good. So next breakout salon will be us exploring bliss and ecstasis. Now, be courageous here, because you have been in touch with bliss. If you were a child playing in the backyard and completely losing sense of time, completely losing a sense of self, and feeling this richness and effortlessness of timeless play, you have been in the bliss state. You were probably in the bliss state yesterday in the train or in your car when you went Yeah. So let's explore bliss and ecstasis. And remember, bliss is yin. It's that receiving. It's the state you feel when you are, let's say, on that massage bed, or in that spa waters, and you just start dissolving, and that's bliss. It's a blessedness. It's a beatitude, and it's very yin and receiving and breathing in, inhalation. Ecstasis is young, rapturous. If you ski, if you sing, if you create, you can recognize ecstasis. And the point of this dialogue is to just see it. Just shine a light on these subtleties, these poetic flavors of the higher state of who we can live every day, and just a little bit more every day, or just being able to learn how to drop into these states. So the question is, bliss and ecstasis are flow states. Drop in. When was the last time you were in flow, in pure bliss or ecstasis? How did it feel in your body? Can you find words for it? Did you experience that timelessness, selflessness, effortlessness, richness? And what gets you in these states? Everybody has different flow triggers, different bliss triggers, different ecstasis triggers. It could be physical activity, it could be creativity, it could be sex and sensuality, it could be being in nature, it could be being with your dogs and cats that drop you out of your sense of, the ego, your children. I mean, flow triggers are everywhere. So let's drop into that now for a few minutes, 10 minutes, okay? And then come back with something that came through for your group, okay? I love these conversations. I hope you enjoy it. Yeah. Eros, our last breakout. Now this is when we let our hair down, yeah? Where are you on the erotic spectrum? How erotically open are you? And allow yourself to just express it, because when you can, you'll be able to move up that scale towards Eros, the life instinct, away from the numbness that happens through Thanatos. And what's your experience of the thanatic sexuality, erotic sexuality in society or in your life? When I began downloading this spectrum, I realized how much Thanatos was played out in my history. Just by trying to heal wounds and trying to match my lover's needs. And so explore that. And I think it's important to see, because then you know how to navigate, your love, you know how to discern your path, your way back to beauty and innocence and pure play, so that you can be in bliss and ecstasis more often. So let's explore Eros. The hour. Well, we're going to continue this conversation on Instagram Live on Saturday morning. So let this sink in, let this integrate. Bring your questions. I work with the body and the mind and the Eros and our desires and legacies as women. We all know that it's our soul, our mind, our metaphysics that designs the flesh. If you want to live healthy and long, all of these need to be explored, so you can be free, so you can breathe, so you can love unconditionally, and so that you can be the future femme you deserve to be. Free, you loving you, you knowing you, and you freeing you is a daily practice. That's the spiritual practice. And some of us touched on spirituality, how Eros shows up in that place. And some of the greatest ecstatics were Franciscan nuns nuns in the 14th century. They wrote ecstatic poetry towards the divine. And that's Eros. That's pure edge of Eros. Ecstatic love for the divine. And it belongs in our spirituality. As soon as you feel that welling up of, I must create from this place, I must keep loving, that's Eros. It's that simple. And it can show up in sexuality as well, obviously, but it's in all of our creative impetus. It's anytime you have this edge to go out and do something, that's erotic energy welling up in you, and recognize it, see it, and drop in with her, your goddess inside of you in your belly. And that's good medicine, huh, ladies? Okay.
Amen to that. This was really wonderful.